Before starting this video, don't forget to leave a like and at the end comment on what you thought of this story. If you don't have anything to say, comment anything. It helps to engage with the videos here on the channel. And this story begins 10 years ago, when Ikonomiya Shingo, who was just an ordinary office worker in Japan, spends an exhausting day taking it in the rear end, non-stop until he can't take it anymore. Shingo then fell asleep while eating dinner, only to be reincarnated into an ice guy in the body of a 6-year-old boy. He is now in the middle of a party with lots of guests and delicious food. As he looked around, he thought he was in a very real dream, and as there were no girls dancing without clothes on, he tried to go back to his suffering life as a wage earner. But a man wakes him up and takes him in front of the party guests, telling him to introduce himself. Shingo, who is now called Wendelin, had no idea what to do in front of all the adults, who seemed to expect something from him. Then his older brother, Eric, appeared and protected him. He introduced the boy to his guests as his younger brother's team, called Wendelin. And in this world we learn that he is the youngest son of a noble family, and that on this day the wedding of his older brother, Kurt, is taking place. Immediately, Will is overjoyed, believing that from now on he will live a life of luxury. But the next day he discovers that his noble family is made up of poor people who pretend to be rich during their festivities. He confirms this with his brother Eric. He says that they had saved money for years so that they could throw a good party for their guests, and now they were back to their original lifestyle. And more shocking news awaited Will, as he discovered that his father is a terrible investor, and that he has about 7 older brothers, including 2 half-brothers. Will is shocked to be the 8th son of a poor nobleman, which leads him to become depressed, as even a Japanese wage earner makes more money and lives a better life than he will have to. One day he finds Eric and 2 of his brothers leaving home, because the eldest brother, Kurt, has inherited everything after his marriage. Therefore, the others must give up their nobility and find a job. Will is incredulous, but his brothers tell him that he too will have to become independent when he reaches adulthood, and Will decides to look for a way to change his life. One day he finds a crystal ball and an instruction booklet with the item in the library. He discovers that the stone can measure a person's magical aptitude, and he believes that he shouldn't have any magic at all. To make matters worse, in this world, only 1 in 1,000 people can use magic, and even though he knows he won't have any magic, he decides to try his luck. He sits down and takes a few deep breaths before finally placing his hand on the crystal and pushing down as if he was going to shit. As he does so, he is shocked to realize that he is a wizard, and the first thing he thinks of is looking for a teacher. However, first he tries to find books on magic, but he has no luck. Then, when his father arrives at the library, Will asks him if there are any books on sorcery in the library, but it's only at this point that he realizes that his father is an illiterate bum. Later that day he was outside and tried to imitate what he saw in a book to bring out his magic, but he couldn't manifest anything. However, at that moment a man appears in front of him and tells Elki that he has felt his magic before, and like a good Japanese man, Shingo has learned to beware of trances. He then points his staff at this person. However, the man takes the staff and throws it away while introducing himself as a wizard called Alfred. The staff he has just thrown creates a domino effect, and a large stone falls on a giant boar that is furious and rushing towards them at full speed. Will is terrified and wants to run away, but the wizard holds him back and tells him to use his magic. Yes, Alfred guides him and helps him circulate his mana to release a powerful wind that pushes the boar away. Will is shocked by this. While the wizard congratulates him on using his first spell, the boar attacks them again, but this time Alfred takes control, and with the flick of his finger, he sends the boar crashing through the trees, using his wind magic. Will is fascinated by Alfred's power, but also a little afraid. However, the wizard calms him down and introduces himself as a former court wizard. He tells the boy, who is shocked by his power, that he has the potential to surpass even him, a court magician, and Will can't believe what he's hearing, as he thought he was a piece of shit. Afterwards, they sit down in the forest to have some tea, and Will's eyes widen in amazement as he sees the lifeless boar mysteriously disappear into that little wizard's bag. Alfred expresses his desire to pass on his magical knowledge to Will, telling the boy that he simply wishes to have an apprentice, that he has always been looking for someone worthy to carry on his legacy as a wizard, and he also assures Will that there's no need to pay for his lesson, and that's all the damn poor boy needed to hear, and he quickly agrees to become Alfred's disciple. However, the wizard tells him that he should keep his magic a secret, as it could end up creating problems for him. For example, if his brother learns that he is a mage, he will try to kill him so that he, the talented younger brother, doesn't steal his lands in the future. It turns out that people in this world always make sure that the magic user becomes the next lord, which is a factor that allows them to completely ignore who was born first. Will gratefully accepts this suggestion, and the next morning his training begins. and first Alfred wants to measure his mana capacity, comparing his mana with Will's, so he gets Alfred to hold his hand, and then he measures both their mana, and Alfred ends up being impressed, and tells Will that he was born with a larger mana reserve than his. The next day, Will dives into his studies of intermediate magic, trying out some fire attacks on a pile of stone. Alfred seems happy with the progress and compliments Will, noting that most people take months to reach this level. What's more, Alfred shares some of the vegetables he collects every day with his young pupil to help him feed his family, which ends up making his older brother Kurt very jealous. After all, his younger brother is being much more useful than he is. The next day, Will takes to the skies, with Alfred's guidance, learning the art of tracking magic. Concentrating with his eyes closed, he locates a bird, and with the help of magic, he throws a stone to quickly capture his lunch. And Alfred is once again speechless at Will's skills, and joins him to enjoy a meal of roast poultry accompanied by homemade wasabi, and Will proudly mentions the fact that he collected these ingredients in the forest. But Alfred advises him not to venture too far into the enchanted forest to get ingredients for lunch, saying that in these forests there are monsters that can easily take your life. A few days later, Will learns water magic and claims that Kurt is watching him. Alfred believes that he must have doubts about Will being a magic user, and is afraid of losing his position. However, Will claims that he has no interest in becoming a lord, so his teacher suggests that he be an adventurer, and Will is immediately enthusiastic about the idea, and even imagines his future full of adventure. While he was thinking about it, Alfred was secretly fighting a curse, trying his best to stop it from ending his life. Later that day, Will informs his family of his plans to become an adventurer, but his father doesn't have the money to put him through the Adventurers Academy, which is very sad. The next day, Will tells Alfred that his family doesn't have the money to put him in an Adventurers Academy, but Alfred tells him that he can join the Merchants Guild instead of going to the academy. He suggests that Will start working from an early age, and teaches him some advanced magic, such as flying and teleporting, so that he can go to other cities quickly. He gives Will an unforgettable experience when he takes him to the skies and shows him the vast world that exists for him to explore. Later that night, Alfred realizes that his curse is getting stronger and stronger, and that he doesn't have much time left. He decides to say goodbye to his student the next day, declaring that Will no longer needs to study with him. This news leaves Will stunned, and he falls to the ground, unable even to concentrate on his flight magic practice. He obviously doesn't want to part with his master so quickly, and asks him to stay by his side. However, Alfred claims that he taught him everything he knew, and refuses to grant his request. That night, during dinner, Will sits still thinking about his master, and then his father tells him a rumor about an intelligent zombie that has been seen in the forest. This zombie is special and looks like a normal human being, even being able to speak perfectly, and the only differences in its features were its cold body, pale skin, and weaker normal human senses. This reminds him that Alfred has pale, very cold skin and very slow reaction. After hearing this, he flies into the forest in search of his master, but he loses his balance and falls before he finds him. Alfred comes to him, and Will still can't believe that his master is dead. He claims that his master is in danger staying in the forest, and says he wants to take him home. But then Alfred tells his pupil that he is the intelligent zombie that everyone is talking about, and Will is totally devastated to discover this. At this point, Alfred tells his life story, saying that he was the Duke's court magician 5 years ago, and one day the Duke's eldest son contracted a deadly disease. So he gathered an army to enter the enchanted forest to find a rare medicinal herb. The monsters in the enchanted forest outnumbered them, and Alfred was the only strong fighter in the army who could fight them. He had to protect the Duke and the soldiers while fighting the monsters, and ended up losing his life trying to protect them. Alfred says that he should have just stayed dead, but a regret didn't let his soul go, and he became a special class of living dead. His only incomplete wish was to find a worthy successor to inherit his magic, and this was fulfilled when he met and trained El. Alfred apologizes to him for not telling him the truth, revealing that he thought the boy would get scared and run away from him. He then presents his student with the final test, and asks him to purify him using his holy magic, before he loses his mind and turns into a real zombie. El starts crying and refuses to eliminate his teacher, but Alfred shows him that his body is already rotten and that he doesn't have long to live, and El doesn't want to see him suffer. So he decides to use his holy magic and purify him. His magic hits Alfred, but it doesn't end up being enough to send him to an ice sky, so he asks El to try harder. At that moment, El is overcome by nostalgia and remembers the last few weeks he spent with his teacher, and he puts all that power into the purification magic. Thus, class, Alfred's body begins to dissolve, and he uses his last moments to thank his student and tells him to do his best in the future. L mourns with his teacher for a long time, then wipes away his tears while vowing to live up to his expectation. After that, he continues to work hard, training his magic a lot, and it is with this intense training that 7 years pass, and he turns 12 years old, and L is finally ready to leave his poor home and family behind. So he sets off to join the Adventurers Academy to start his new life. He arrives at the academy and is admitted to the scholarship class, the academy being a place with many promising newcomers. Everyone introduces themselves, and 2 girls, Louise and Anna, end up being the center of attention, as they come from families that are very famous in the martial arts business, so they carry the blood of those who serve the Duke directly. And when it's L's turn to introduce himself, he realizes that his communication skills have diminished because he's been in a village for years, and he fumbles as he introduces himself. Obviously, no one seems to care about him, and he thinks it will be difficult to make friends here. The class begins, and the instructor hands out group registration forms to everyone, because that's how the training will begin. And L knows that no one will pick a nobody from the countryside like him. However, he doesn't know that everyone thinks he's amazing, because he's the only wizard in the class who has high-level skill. During the lunch break, the 2 rich girls, Louise and Anna, talk to their best friend, Elvin, about the possibility of the high-level wizard joining their group. They believe that L can easily carry them off his back. The girls also claim that they are the strongest in the class, because they can use magic to strengthen their bodies, which is exactly why they think they are the most suitable to join L's group. The other people also want him very much, but no one dares to approach him, because they've all started to believe that since he's the best magician, he probably won't want to talk to anyone below his level. And in the next class, the teacher announces that the students who want to work part-time should try hunting, as this is the best way for a student to get money. He advises them to hunt in groups, because hunting alone can be dangerous, and L gets desperate once again, because he's sure that no one will choose him, and the girls who want him in their group end up getting nervous when they approach him. And Bloody Elvin is an idiot, who thinks L is keeping his distance from him and is assessing their ability individually. Louise also agrees, and they decide to take first place in the hunting tournament, proving that they are worthy of joining his group. They hunt more than any other group in their class, and think they now have a good chance of being able to join L. But when he delivers a pile of dead monsters to the receptionist at the Merchants Guild, they are shocked and speechless. One of the more pessimistic students says that L is on a totally different level to them, and that there's no point in trying to be on his side. Everyone believes his words and leaves the room, having given up hope of joining L. Meanwhile, L is planning to make some friends by inviting his class to a dinner with his prize money. As soon as he receives the grant, he turns around to ask his classmates to join him, but the room is empty, and that group of students, who are very good but no better than L, are frustrated by their humiliating defeat. However, they don't want to give up partying with L, because walking alongside him is the same as guaranteeing a successful future. They want to hunt more monsters than him, so that he recognizes them. And to do this, they go to the most dangerous part of the forest. Then, they realize their mistake when a pack of wolves surrounds him, and despite their efforts, they are not good enough to defeat this group of monsters. Out of nowhere, a wolf launches a surprise attack on Louise, and L comes to protect, but he is injured in the process. Seeing their formation fall apart, all the wolves jump on them to launch a combined attack. But luckily L was also in the area, and sensed that his classmates were in danger, so he used his tracking skills, which enabled him to arrive on the scene at just the right moment. Taking down all the wolves at once, L rescues the trio, and takes them to a hospital, where they apologize for being a burden to him, and finally reveal to L that everyone in the class considers him to be way above their level. They apologize, saying that they should have avoided him just like everyone else. And so L finally discovers that everyone doesn't hate him, and that there are even people who have put themselves in danger just to get his recognition. But now they claim to have seized his place, and declare themselves unworthy of being his teammate. L really wants to join their group, but before he can say anything, the instructor enters the room with good news and tells his students that Duke has organized a garden party for their class. The next day, they go to a party organized by Duke Amadeus, who ignores everyone and approaches L as soon as he sees him. They have a friendly chat about the Ballmaster family being his vassals, and then he invites L for a personal chat. L doesn't like the fact that he has to meet with a complete stranger on his own, so he tells him that that bunch of losers are his group, and asks Duke to allow them to be present. After that, inside the mansion, they meet the court magician, Blanc Tag, who is also the teacher of the former court magician, Alfred. Elle is shocked to hear this, and Blanc Tag, who I'll just call Blanc, explains that he's an expert in tracking magic, and that he's always kept an eye on Alfred's magic, even after he became a whispering undead. Yes, Blanc reveals that he has been monitoring Alfred for the last 12 years. However, Blanc claims that he knows Alfred passed away 7 years ago, and the only way he could have freed himself from that zombie form was if his wish to find a powerful disciple had been fulfilled, and everything points to Elle, who can't deny that he's a pupil of Alfred. After all, Blanc even recognized his magic bag. Elle then tells them the whole story, and the court magician and the Duke are moved to tears when they hear about Alfred's last moments. And Elle also cries when he remembers him. Elle has a lot of supplies from Alfred's last expedition, and it's all in the magic bag he wants to give back to Duke. And while Elle is doing that, his rich partners are waiting outside, and they still can't believe the sad story they've just heard about Elle and Alfred. This makes them realize that just like them, Elle is also a talented person, but he can't become a successor because he's not the first son. And as soon as Elle leaves, they run up to him and apologize for having called him into their group so suddenly. They reveal that they wanted to form a group with him just to take advantage of his power, but now they realize that this isn't fair. However, Elle responds by saying that he doesn't mind, and that he would be very grateful to form a group with them, believing that together they can have a lot of fun. At first the trio are shocked, but then they laugh and accept Elle as their friend, until Duke suddenly interrupts the conversation and rewards Elle with 1,000 gold coins for returning Alfred's supplies. Everyone is shocked to hear this, and Elle's realization that he has won 1,000 gold coins comes a little too late. What's more, Blumley tells him that he has also inherited Alfred's mansion and all his property, and Elle moves into the big, intimidating house that night. He thinks the house is too big for just one person, and decides to invite his friends to live here with him. After which a few months pass, and during the summer break, Elle takes his friends to attend his brother Eric's wedding. They travel in a magical airship, where Louise is dressed in a Brazilian outfit because she wants to attract the attention of the nobles at the wedding, and Elvin is terrified of the flying ship, looking like a caveman who has never seen one before. And Blum was there too, and he makes the most of the drinks and all the courtesy of the airship. He tells Elvin that the plane won't crash, but after he sees some dark clouds next to the ship, he retracts his statement. He takes a good look at the clouds, and a giant skeleton dragon comes out of them, causing everyone to shit their pants, and the other passengers start demanding that the captain appear to talk about this incident. But everyone is told that the great wizard Bluntag will help them defeat this undead dragon. However, Blum himself says that this is impossible because only holy magic can purify the undead, and he has no talent for it. However, he claims to know a talented wizard who uses holy magic, and basically forces Elle to perform this service. And despite being nervous, he agrees to fight the dragon. Blum stays behind to protect the ship. Elle flies up to the dragon and uses his magic barrier to protect himself from its destructive breath, and Blum protects the ship with his magic barrier. Elle charges with his holy magic, but the dragon focuses its attacks on him to stop him. Elle then dodges its attack, concentrates his holy magic like a spiritual bomb, and hurls it towards the bone dragon. This holy magic hits the dragon, and it lights up and writhes in pain from the purification. However, he tries to use his remaining strength to attack Elle, but Elle dodges and blocks his attack, until his magic finally works and the dragon loses its soul. His bones crumble, and the giant magic stone that holds them together also crumbles. Inside the ship, Blum signals for Elle's group to start collecting the dragon's bones, and using the magic bag, the bones are collected, and the giant red magic stone is also collected. When Elle returns to the ship, everyone celebrates the fact that the day has been saved and no one has died. But now Elle just wants to relax for a few days after facing this dragon. Soon, Blum's old adventure partner arrives and tells Elle that he won't have a chance to rest. Blum is surprised to see his friend and introduces him to Elle, and they talk about their adventurous days together. The next day, the ship arrives in the capital, and Blum flees immediately after landing, leaving his friend in charge of looking after Elle. Soon, an order of knights arrives, and their captain thanks Elle for killing the dragon and asks him to accompany them to the palace, as the king has summoned him. His friends leave him and go to his brother's house, while Elle stays with an Arthurian who accompanies him to the palace. Elle ends up receiving a great reception as a famous dragon-slaying hero, but the nobles are not happy about him being the center of attention. Elle greets the king and praises him for defeating the skeleton dragon. He awards him the twin dragon medal. He also makes him a nobleman by granting him the title of baronet. Then Elle recites the oath that the king took earlier, and after that, he reaffirms that he will buy all the dragon bones and the gigantic magic stone that Elle got. Soon afterwards, the general and the prime minister start arguing about the fair price for these items. The general wants to pay a much higher reward, but the prime minister complains, saying that they don't have the budget for it. And before the argument escalates, the Pope interferes, and the reward ends up being set at 150,000 gold coin. Later that evening, they return from the palace after collecting the reward. At a martial artist's, the spear user puts on a show to try and impress Elle, with the aim of trying to get him to hire him. However, the guards drag him away, and the Arterio tells Elle to get used to these idiots, as they will continue to come after him in search of a job. He also warns him about the nobles who will try to get him to devour their daughters, and Elle gets scared, saying that he's afraid of women. The next day, he finally arrives at Eric's wedding, and the two brothers who left home with him are also there. They complain that Kurt hasn't sent any presents for the bride and groom, and at this rate their family will look bad in front of all the guests. Elle decides to pay for the presents, and he realizes that being a nobleman is more than a matter of showing off and having money. However, what matters now is that his favorite brother is getting married, and he's very happy, which ends up making Elle happy too. The next day, the Pope invites Elle to his house, and he visits him with a donation of 200 gold coins. The Pope is impressed by his business sense, and they chat about religion and baptism, while a beautiful grotto arrives with tea and captivates Elle's heart. The Pope introduces the grotto as his granddaughter, Elise. The old man tells her that Elise can use sacred healing magic, and she often helps the poor in church, which has earned her the title of saint. Elise is a nun in training, but her grandfather doesn't want her to join the church, and wants to find her a suitable fiancé. Elle jokes that her beauty will lead to fierce competition between the boys who want her, and he jokes some more that maybe he'll join in, and he keeps laughing at his joke, but then he realizes that no one finds it funny. In fact, the Pope ended up taking his words literally and accepted him as his granddaughter's fiancé. Elle is speechless, because he realizes that he got engaged out of the blue. He met the girl not even a minute ago, became her fiancé, and now there's no going back. When he returns home, his friends learn that he went for a walk and talked to the Pope, and came back engaged. However, they tell Elle that they believe Elise is a great wife, and Elle learns that there is no such thing as a romantic marriage in this world, and that at least in this case he was lucky to see the girl before things were decided. Now a clown makeup is completed on Elle's face, and he is dressed in this rather flashy outfit. All this so that people don't recognize him as a successful nobleman. Elle comes to see him, and constantly teases him by saying that his wife is beautiful, and that he's jealous of her, which makes Elle wonder if Elise is really happy about it. Later they go to the market, where the spear fanatic identifies him, the man with the spear being a professional stalker. He starts showing off his skills with the spear himself, and everyone joins in trying to get Elle's attention so that he becomes their boss. In response, Elle teleports back to his house, and Elwyn and Eric tell him to get an employee who can deal with all the unwanted applicants. And Elwyn suggests that he be hired, and Elle ends up liking the idea a lot, so he immediately hires his friend, who now can't believe what has just happened. Elle doesn't want to go into the details of how their contract will work, so he ignores everyone and goes straight to see his fiancée. However, he ends up teleporting out of her grandfather's window. He falls and stays there until the old Pope returns to his office. But soon Elise finds him lying there, and he takes her up to the roof to talk to her in private. He nervously asks her what she thinks of their engagement, and Elise replies that she's happy to be the wife of the heroic dragon slayer, and that turns out to be enough for Elle, as he realizes that Elise isn't against their marriage. Back at his house, we see that Elwyn has become arrogant, as he is the only one who already has a job in his group, and he tells the girls that he will ask Elle to hire them as his helpers. But the girls don't want to live under Elwyn's command, and they want a way to overcome him anyway. At that moment, they see Eric in love with his wife, and Louise suggests that they should try to become Elle's wives, and if he can't have more than one wife, they will have to be his mistresses. Anna doesn't mind the idea either, and the two girls start planning their wonderful future, in which they won't have to work anymore after marrying Elle. They try to put their plan into practice, and it all starts with Louise trying to seduce him by doing a classic carnival dance, but he gets annoyed and leaves the room. She doesn't give up and gets ready for the evening. However, Anna is shy and can't keep up. After that, Elle receives an invitation to a dinner party from a butler, so the next day he goes to the priest's mansion, where a fancy private dinner with Elise takes place. but the two still don't know each other very well and don't know what to say. Elle wants to leave as soon as he's finished eating, but the butler suggests he take his girlfriend shopping on their first date. He ends up going into a very expensive jewelry store and finds the perfect engagement ring for the girl. She tells him that he doesn't need to spend so much money on her, but the ring catches his eye, and since he's rich and doesn't even have to pay tax, he decides to give it to his fiancée. However, when he finds out that this magic ring costs a lot of money, he wonders what the hell it's made of, and wonders if this jewel is a philosopher's stone or something. However, he stakes his ass full of money, and because of this, he decides to act like a man and buys the ring without even trying to get a discount. When they get back to the carriage, Elise compliments him on his choice, asking him if he knew that ring was magical before he chose it, and he replies by saying that he just felt it looked beautiful on her. So the girl is surprised by Will's sincerity, and in response, Will says that most of the time he feels overwhelmed when everyone calls him a hero, and he keeps thinking all the time that he has to act according to everyone's expectation. However, he admits that around her he can be himself. He decides to charge her ring with his magical power, and the item begins to glow, causing a light show to take place inside the carriage. Will smiles and Elise is frightened, believing that Will is a madman. A few days pass since that day, and Louise and Anna are discussing their plans to seduce Will with Elvin, when suddenly Elise appears, saying she has come to find her husband. She discovers that he's not here, because the king has summoned him on a mission, and the king is ordering Will to kill a dragon, and although he's shocked to have been given such a mission, he kind of can't refuse the king's orders. And during the night, the captain explains the liberation plan to Ballantyg and Will, saying that they need to rid the lands marked on the map of the presence of a dragon and other monsters. However, only powerful mages can neutralize the breath of a dragon, so Will and Blanc are chosen for this mission alongside a third teammate, who is a burly warrior with a Namer-style mohawk in his prime. Will is startled by the scary-looking man and asks if he's the warrior of the group, but Blanc tells him that he's actually the palace wizard. His name is Armstrong, and even though he's a wizard, he trains his body to the limit and loves hunting dragons. Without much conversation, they immediately fly to the place where the dragon is, under Armstrong's leadership, and join the army there. Soon, the members of Will's group learn of this mission and are tasked with joining the fight to exterminate the small monsters in the area once the dragon has been eliminated. Will's temporary army for this mission is made up of all the warriors who want to get his attention, with Will as their commander, even though he's a failure. They arrive at the military base after Will, and Elise soon joins them as a healer, but she can't see her beloved because he has already left to fight the dragon. When Blanc and Armstrong arrive at the dragon's lair, Armstrong shouts loudly, causing the dragon to appear very angry. Armstrong starts the fight by using his magic to transform himself into a Power Ranger, and his magic armor is so well made that it even adapts his mohawk to his helmet, and his weapon turns out to be a huge hammer, which he uses to hit the dragon and throw it back on the ground. Blanc tells Will to do his part before the big man runs out of magic, and he uses a powerful wind spell to kill the dragon, all while Armstrong is holding him captive. Afterwards, Will collects the dragon's body using his magic bag, but Blanc tells him that they can't relax just yet, as a large number of monsters will be out of control now that the dragon has been defeated. The battle with the monsters begins on both sides, and people in Will's army are seriously injured, and Elise is trying to heal the wounded soldiers all day. And after her magic runs out, she uses the power stored in her ring. She hears from the soldiers about her fiancé's heroic deeds, and that's exactly what keeps her motivated to continue healing everyone. At dawn, the messenger arrives and declares that the battle is finally over, and that all the monsters have been killed. But then a man arrives saying that Will is wounded. Elise gets worried and runs to see him, but he's perfectly fine, so she's overjoyed and faints. Later, she wakes up in the shade of a tree, with Will by her side, and he too has heard stories about how she treated the soldiers. They give courage. They have a touching moment together, and Elise tells Will that she was very worried about Willie, at which point Armstrong comes running up to them and lifts Elise, telling Will that she is his niece. After the success of the mission, Will is promoted to the rank of Baron and receives another Dragon Slayer medal. The king orders him to move to the capital, and he is packing his thing, when suddenly Elise joins him and declares that she will live with him in the capital. Louise and Anna think that this is a bad idea for their plans to become Will's concubines, and think that their plan has fallen through, as they won't be able to seduce him. However, they had no idea that Elise thought they were already engaged to Well, since they lived with him, but he clarifies that there's nothing like that between them. He takes the chance and asks her how she would feel if he had a harem of girls besides her, and Elise says that this is something completely normal in noble society, and that her priest or grandfather does much worse. She also says that her magic can cure any STDs he might catch, which makes everyone very happy. Louise and Anna don't know if they'll find a better chance than this, so they declare their intention to become Well's second wives, and Elise sees no problem with this, so Well ensures the expansion of his harem. A few months later, Well's other brother gets married, and during the wedding, Eric tells him about the martial arts tourney held in the capital every 3 years. And Well isn't interested in that, because there is no category for mages in the tournament. But his brothers say he should take part as a nobleman. So Well says he'll register as a swordsman and use magic to strengthen his body, but he finds out that that isn't allowed either. He gets discouraged, but still decides to take part in the swordsman category, even though he knows he'll get beaten up. And he's only doing it because his brothers are insisting. Their friends also find out about the tournament from Blanc, who tells them to take part for the honor of his family. Louise and Anna know that they can't use magic to strengthen their bodies as usual, so they start training straight away. Alvin, however, is quite relaxed, as he already has a secure job. However, Blanc warns that if he's useless, Well may kick him out of the group and fire him as an employee, and Alvin ends up being overcome by his doubt. After that, during the night, Well tells everyone that Elise wants to join their group as a healer, and also mentions that the current champion of the tournament isn't taking part to allow other people to have a chance. Hearing this, Alvin thinks he can win the competition. The next morning, Alvin leaves everyone behind in training, and Well is the weakest of the group. He's terrible at running, push-ups, and can't even use a sword properly, so he quits training. His friends continue training day after day, but when Well tells everyone that the reigning champion will be taking part in the tournament again, Alvin becomes depressed and demotivated. He feels like giving up and stopping training, even when Louise and Anna tell him not to. When he goes to talk to Elle about it, he finds out that Elise was training hard and insisted on not disturbing their group with her weak physique. This gives Alvin the motivation he needed, and he starts training hard again. The day of the tournament soon arrives, and Elle's first match is against the reigning champion, who also happens to be Captain Mike. Elle knows there's no hope of winning, so he wants at least not to be humiliated. However, as soon as the battle begins, the captain knocks him out with the hilt of his sword in a split second, sending Elle back to the stand. There he has tea with his fiancée, while waiting for his friends to finish their fights. Everyone fights, and Louise is the first to return after losing in the preliminary semi-final. Anna has reached the final preliminary competition, and her opponent is the spear fanatic who always seeks Elle's attention. He plans to defeat the girl so that he can show Elle his worth, with a goal and dream of joining the Dragon Slayers group. Anna discovers that this man is much stronger and more skilled than she is, so she quickly loses and returns to her companion's side. After losing, she wants to tell Elle that the spear fanatic is a very talented man. His name is Roderick, and he can be very useful. However, Elle is sleeping now, as Elise didn't let him sleep much last night. Elvin, on the other hand, made it to the finals, but injured his arm in the semi-final round, and his opponent in the final is the captain. While he was getting his treatments in the back room, the doctor told him to quit for his own good, but he doesn't want to be kicked out of Elle's group. His friends are also there, and give him some snacks sent by Elle, his way of wishing them well, and realizing that Elle won't throw him out even if he loses, Elvin decides to fight for his friend's honor. He obviously loses, but his skills and willpower impress the captain, who decides to mentor him personally and also place Anna under his protection. Later, Elle and Louise also find a mentor to teach them martial arts, and Elle gets a bad feeling when Elle takes him to a desolate area. There, Elle's fear comes true when he discovers that the mentor is his old friend Armstrong, who promises to make them as strong as he is. So 3 years pass in the blink of an eye, and now Elle is an adult, because in this world, at the age of 15, he's already an adult, you know? And now he can finally start his adventurous life with his friends, and he's very excited about doing something fun for the first time in 3 years. Before, he was just a landless nobleman and had to be available for all the king's requests. and now he thinks he can finally enjoy his freedom. Just then, Blan comes to them with an order from the Adventurers Guild and tells them that they have been called on a mission to explore an ancient dungeon, and Blan will act as their advisor, as the mission is quite dangerous, and he takes El and his group to a place where they will defeat a dragon that has existed for years and has never been defeated. He shows them a deep pit and takes them inside, telling them that the Adventurers Guild has sent many adventurers to explore this dungeon before, yet no one has ever returned from this place, and the guild believes there is a dragon inside, so they call El's group. But ironically, they are all afraid of dragons and end up hiding behind El. Soon they spot a door and enter an empty room with a magic circle on the floor. Blan realizes that there is something wrong in this room and tells everyone to run, but the door closes automatically before they can move. The magic circle on the floor is activated and traps them in place, before teleporting them away, one by one. Luckily, they end up in the same place, which is actually at the bottom of the dungeon. And Blan says he's heard of the traps of ancient civilizations, which force intruders to climb to the surface while fighting monsters in their path, and he believes he's fallen into a trap of this kind. Louise tells El to simply teleport them out of here, but he can't do that because his teleportation magic doesn't work, even if he has a very clear idea of the starting point and the destination point. In short, it was nerfed by the script out of the blue, and after Elise recovers from the shock of the teleport, the group is forced to use the old method, climbing the dungeon on their own 2 feet. So they reach a huge room with an army of golem soldiers. The door behind them closes, and an army of golems starts to wake up. El wants to blow them all up, but his friends prevent him from doing so, and say that he should save his mana for dealing with the boss. They decide to show the results of their training and take down the golems easily, and Blanc supports them by blocking the golems' attacks with wind magic, and tells El to do the same. Anna manages to take down the leader of the golems, disorienting all the enemies, while Louise uses a magical shockwave to cause a lot of area damage, and El comes forward and also puts on a show by hitting his enemy. They finally defeat all the golems in the room, and then they see the remains of the adventurers who came to this place before. Louise, who has the sharpest senses of the group, hears some sounds coming from the stairs, so she goes to take a look and finds more golems coming towards them. So El and his group have no time to rest, and they get busy fighting again. Many days pass in the same way, and they continue fighting the golems without even resting. Everyone gets worn out with each floor, and they keep climbing up, defeating hordes and hordes of golems with each floor, and finally they reach an empty hall. They celebrate thinking they've cleared the dungeon, but Blanc notices a giant mechanical dragon in the center of the hall, and tries to warn everyone of the creature's presence. However, the dragon wakes up and immediately attacks them with its explosive breath, but Blanc blocks it with his magic barrier, and our hero supports him in defense. At the same time, golem soldiers come from the entrance behind them and beat up Anna, proving that golems are macho. The boss battle begins, with Elvin and Louise fighting the golem, and Elise healing Anna, while the 2 mages in the group block the dragon's deadly breath. They know that their magic won't last long, so El suggests a plan, saying that they should combine their powers and defeat the dragon quickly. Blanc agrees and sends all his magical power into El's body, and then he releases a powerful beam of magic, which pushes the powerful dragon backwards. After which Blanc soon runs out of magic and collapses. But El is still standing fighting the dragon alone. Soon El also begins to lose his power, and just as he is about to taste defeat, Elise runs up to him and turns his face as red as a tomato, saying that she will use a special magic on him now. Suddenly El kisses him, which heals him, increases his stamina and his magic. Even his third leg moves in his pants, and Elise finally uses up all her energy doing this and faints. El holds her, and realizes that he is much more powerful thanks to the power of love, and using his magic ray he manages to hit the dragon's head, destroying its circuit and deactivating it. When the boss is defeated, the golem soldiers also stop moving, and unfortunately El collapses afterwards, unable to celebrate the victory with his friend. His friends take him and Elise to a safe place, and the girls tell Elise that she doesn't need to kiss El to heal him, since they don't understand how the power of love works. Damn heretic. El soon finds himself all excited, and asks Louise and Anna to come and see something very interesting, and although they are too tired to deal with his nonsense, they end up accompanying him. El ends up waking up because of all their excitement, and helps his fiancée to get up too. Then they go to Blanc, who is in a library next to their room. He discovered that a great wizard from an ancient civilization made this dungeon as a test to find someone worthy of receiving his legacy. El doesn't understand what could be so so valuable to create such an elaborate test to protect him. But his friends have already discovered what was being protected. They take him to a hangar with 7 ancient magical airships, which are actually more modern than the current one. And Blanc, upon seeing this, says that this was the discovery of the century, and that they are facing millions of gold coins, and even though Elle doesn't like taking money from the king, he will have nowhere to escape to again. Out of nowhere, Elle comes and pulls a lever, and opens a gate out of the hangar, and everyone is happy to finally be able to leave this dungeon behind. Soon Elle and his group go to the king, and present him with everything they found in the dungeon, and the king buys everything they found, while the guild ends up buying the teleport circle they found by force. And when it comes time to collect the reward money, the Prime Minister stammeringly declares that everyone in Elle's group will receive 2 million gold coins for successfully completing this mission. And as the kingdom doesn't have this money in cash at the moment, it will be paid back by the kingdom in 20 years. Fortunately, in this anime, taxes are low, unlike taxes here on planet Earth, where politicians want to charge even for the air we breathe. And Elle, with all this money, decides to move out of the capital and back to his old mansion. He tells his plans to Armstrong, who wishes him good luck for the future. He also tells him that while he was exploring the dungeon, some people were spreading rumors about his death in the capital. Elle heard this story for the first time and asked who would be the sick person to do this, and the man tells him that he is now suffering because of his success, as he got too rich too quickly, and now people are jealous of him. And all his friends agree with this, saying that most people are jealous of them because they are members of the Great Dragon Slayers group, and they fear that this will become even more intense because of the reward they are receiving, and none of them want the hassle that comes with the money. So Anna takes the Adventurers Guild rulebook and says that they can redistribute the reward they received for the mission. Louise and Elvin also agree with her, saying that they plan to give their share to Elle and ask him to pay them back in the form of wages and gifts. Anna asks Elise what she is planning to do with her reward, and she says that everything she owns belongs to her husband. As a result, Elle has around 10 million gold coins, which violently increases the number of people who envy him. The news of Elle's safe return reaches Hooker, who in this case is the nobleman who started the bad rumors about Elle's death. He thinks that although the boy has returned from the dungeon, his enemies are now united and can harm him more directly. A few days later, Elle is having tea with his friends when he notices someone outside his window. He's afraid there might be a thief or a murderer after him, so he decides to hire a guard to protect his mansion when he moves to the academy town. And his friends like the idea too, and say that the guard must be strong, loyal to Elle, and very good at managing things. And there is only one person with these qualities who comes to everyone's mind. Anna tells Elle that he should hire the spear fanatic, Roderick, and although he is shocked by the idea, Elle decides to see if the man still wants to work with him. He invites Roderick to their house, asks him if he wants to join them as a guard, and the man starts to cry because he never expected this day to come. He's been trying for years to get his attention and never believed this moment would arrive. The stalker is still around the house, and everyone notices when she starts drooling after seeing them eating a cake. Louise and Roderick try to catch her, and Alvin keeps Elle's face down to protect him from danger. But the girl is too fast and escaped, and Roderick says that she must have been sent by the same men who spread the rumors about Elle's death, and asks Elle's permission to investigate this matter. He also advises him to leave the capital immediately for his own safety. However, Elle still has many things to do here. The next day, he goes to the Magic Guild's research laboratory with his group, as he has heard that they have reused the teleportation magic circle he found in the dungeon, creating a device that can summon anything the user can imagine. Alvin says that this machine is an underwear thief's greatest dream, and Louise and Anna beat him up. Elle ignores his idiot friends and focuses on the magic circle to test it, imagining what he wants. The magic circle starts to work and brings out what he was imagining, which turns out to be one of the lab assistant's underwear who slaps Elle, and he takes his underwear away. However, on his second time, he succeeds and summons exactly what he wanted and takes what he summoned out of the laboratory, carrying the item in a wheelbarrow, without allowing us to see which item he had summoned. Incredibly, Stalker appears trying to follow him, and she smells something edible in the carriage. However, Elle teleports his group back home. She follows Elle to his house, where he is throwing a party for everyone who helped him before he left the capital. While everyone is enjoying their drinks and food, Elle presents his latest dish, which is a raw fish with a poo eye, and says that he caught the fish using the magic tool and that he made the poo himself. The guests are doubtful about eating the raw fish, but as Elle insists, they take a bite and find the dish tasty, especially the brown liquid used to season the fish. And when she sees everyone enjoying this dish, the stalker starts drooling and has trouble controlling herself. Just then, Roderick returns from his mission and informs Elle that the Prime Minister's brother, Rooker, was behind the bad rumors about him. Roderick believes that Rooker wants to overtake his older brother and become Prime Minister, and he was trying to do this by hurting the people close to the Prime Minister. He's even sent a message to Elle's family to tell them about his supposed death, and Rooker wants Kurt's children to forfeit their title and property so they'll owe him forever. Elle says he wants to do something about the nasty man, but Roderick has already dealt with him by spreading some false rumors that Rooker conspired to kill Elle in the dungeon, and that now the king wanted to question him. Elle says that's a bit much, but Roderick says he has personal reasons for going after him. It turns out that Rooker is Roderick's illegitimate father, who refused to meet him, and what's more, he abandoned his mother after getting her pregnant. Roderick knows that his father is a piece of human garbage who stinks worse than the brown sauce Elle served everyone, which is exactly why Rooker was the first person he decided to investigate, and his hunch proved correct. While talking about their respective family problems, Anna arrives with Tom for Roderick, and the stalker can no longer control his hunger. She slams the door hard, and everyone is on their guard to fight off the intruder. But when she comes tearing through the door, everyone is too surprised to do anything. She heads aggressively towards Elle, and when Elvin tries to stop her, she knocks him to the ground and runs towards Elle again, and he cringes in fear that she's after his life. But the girl simply picks up a piece of tuna and starts eating it. Just then, the general arrives and apologizes for his daughter's rude behavior and introduces her as Elma. She says that she had been investigating Elle for the last few days to see if he could really feed her well, and he passed the test. Elma doesn't hesitate and asks Elise for more food, while her father explains her perpetual hunger to Elle. Blanc says that the girl suffers from hero syndrome, which means that there's always magic running through her body, and she's always hungry. But the good thing about this is that she's very powerful, and Elma proves this by carrying a tuna into the hall and breaking it in two without even trying, which is why she needs to eat constantly. And the general tells Elle to use her as his bodyguard, or as his wife, as long as he feeds her. The girl's father arrived as if he wanted nothing, and immediately offered his daughter's body to Elle. And this turned out to be shocking news for Elle, and he tells the man that from now on, he intends to live as an ordinary adventurer and hunt small animals. So he says he doesn't need such a strong bodyguard. But the general says he won't be able to live as an ordinary adventurer. He has heard from his informants about the Duke's plans to make him hunt monsters in his territory, and Wilma would be a perfect addition to his group. The Duke is surprised by his friend's intelligence network, and then he confesses his plans and asks Elle to carry out a mission for him. On the other hand, Hooker's messenger has sent a letter to Elle's house, telling him about the supposed death of the great dragon slayer. The letter reaches Kurt and his wife. They are shocked by the news of Elle's death, and the letter says that Hooker wants Kurt's children to inherit Elle's title and estate and join his faction. This news comes as a pleasant shock to Kurt, and he starts laughing when he hears about this opportunity. However, his wife shouts out of the blue, saying she saw something outside the window. Kurt decides to take a look too, and as soon as he looks out, he turns pale with fright, as if he'd seen the Brazilian national team lose to Paraguay, when there was only Elle and his group. And there they discuss the Duke's plan with the Lord of the territory, and Blanc has a little chat with Elle's father. He starts talking about the expedition led by the previous Duke to the Enchanted Forest 15 years ago, in which the 2,000 soldiers he was leading died. Elle's father knows about this incident, as he also sent a troop of soldiers to help the Duke. Blanc tells him that all those dead soldiers have turned into zombies, and Elle and his team are here to purify them. Kurt then takes the lead and says that they won't help with anything. Blanc says that they don't need that, and that they're here to talk about what will be done on their land. Kurt then demands to be paid a commission for what is removed from his territory. He asks the village chief what the normal fee is, and after learning that it is 30, he demands that Elle pay 50% of his commission. At this point, his younger brother Herman tries to convince Kurt not to be such an idiot, as they can recover the belongings of the dead soldiers sent from their region too. But Kurt remains adamant. He says that his poor soldiers had nothing worth recovering, and that their funerals had already taken place, at which point Elle comes without Rita and starts talking to Elle's older brother, saying that the souls of the dead are still trapped in their bodies and that they won't achieve peace unless they are freed. He offers to give them all a proper funeral, but Kurt says there's no need for that and accuses them of trying to take advantage of him by using his soldier's funeral. Elvin holds back when he hears this, dying to hit Kurt, but Elvin is terrible at holding back, and he ends up exploding with rage, asking Kurt to change his attitude. It's at this point that Kurt mocks Elvin, asking if all his employees are that rude. El doesn't take kindly to the taunts and keeps trying to stop Elvin from breaking his brother's neck. Tired of negotiating with this coward, he ends up asking his father directly about the negotiation. Kurt is furious at being left out and talks a lot of shit again, but this time Louise and Anna tell him to watch his tone when talking to the Baron, and this makes him even more curious, and El reflects to himself that his brother is like the crazy clients and toxic checks from his past life. Later, El and his group have dinner with one of his older brothers and his wife Marlena, who tell El that after he gained fame as the famous dragon slayer, Kurt lost his mind due to jealousy. He's been paranoid ever since, and thinks that El is here to steal his right to his territory. Everyone enjoys dinner, but when El's brother, who I can't remember his name, comes to serve Blanc alcohol, he refuses the offer and eats only the nuts he brought with him. Later, Marlena asks El to bring back her grandfather's belonging, as the man was also part of the expedition at the time, and he promises to do his best. She thanks him by saying that he should become the next lord, in place of that imbecile Kurt, and she says this without even caring what the others will think. And El realizes that this is the uncomfortable struggle for succession that his master taught him about, and now he plans to finish this job as quickly as possible in order to abandon his family. The next day he starts his mission and goes to the enchanted forest to look for the living dead. In the middle of the forest, he says that he will devour the backs of their relatives if they don't show up to be purified, and Elise asks if these low-quality insults will work, and Blanc says that normal zombies are idiots, but the zombies in this forest react to this kind of insult. That said, the sky turns dark and zombies appear from all directions. Elise takes some cloth with a magic circle drawn on it and places it on the ground, and she and El pour their magic into it to create a purification barrier. They increase the barrier as much as they can, and so the zombies that touch the barrier are purified and their bodies disappear, leaving only their armor behind. El's companions complain, saying that they're not getting any action, and Blanc tells them that their duty is to recover the armor, as that's the only thing they can do at the moment. A while later, the leader of the undead army, the former Duke, appears and is also easily purified. El then asks if they've finished purifying all the zombies, but the girl with the pink hair reminds him that Marlena's grandfather hasn't shown up yet, and they wait for him, until suddenly a zombie Ivern attacks them from the sky, and Louise cluelessly saves Elvin. The girl with the pink hair stands in front of the monster, and she attacks it with her giant axe, cutting off its head, after which the monster is also purified. At this point, some undead Jabalis gather, advancing over the barrier without being purified, which forces the members of El's group to get down to real work, and when the monsters are defeated, they too end up being purified by magic. And after a while, all the zombies are eliminated. Everyone is also exhausted, and Elise removes the barrel, but the last of the human zombies appears, and by his armor, El can tell that he is Marlena's grandfather. He and Elise go to deal with him, but the zombie speaks and asks about his granddaughter, asking if El really intends to commit those atrocities, he said. In reply, he says that he was only attracting the zombies, and soon afterwards Blanc tells everyone that this man has evolved from a zombie into a lich. But El continues to communicate with the old man, saying that his granddaughter is living a happy life with her husband. He is happy and drops his sword, and accepts his fate without resisting Elise's purification, being purified without even leaving his armor behind. El takes the soldiers' belongings back to the village, where the people are thrilled to receive the mementos of their dead relatives. They thank El for what he has done, but then Cut arrives and declares that all the armor must be returned to him, only allowing everyone to mourn and miss the dead. He reveals his plan to melt down all the armor and use the metal to make tools for the development of his lands, and all the people beg him to let them bury the armor of their beloved relatives in their graves. But Cut refuses, and El confronts his brother and tells him that he is going too far, and Cut responds by saying that the development of his lands is worth much more than a few starving commoners, and that to improve his lands, he definitely needs iron. El says that if he really only needs iron, he can keep this block of iron in his bag, and in return, he demands that Cut leave the villagers alone. Cut gets scared and falls to the ground, but when his minions ask him what they should do now, he tells everyone to wait for El to leave the village. El returns to the capital the next day day and hands over the soldier's armor to Lord Amadeus, who says he will return the belongings to the dead soldier's family. But this will take some time, and until this is done, El is ordered to stand by in his village. El doesn't want to spend a single moment near his brother and his family, as they are uncomfortable, but he is obliged to follow the Lord's orders. And even Blanc tells him to enjoy his stay in the house where he spent his childhood. He teleports back home when the village chief is surprised to see him again and invites his group to take part in the mass funeral to be held the next day. At the funeral, Elise prays for the dead soldier. After all, she is the priestess famous as a saint, and this makes the villagers very grateful to her. However, they are unhappy that Kunt didn't show up to pay his respects to the dead. Later, the villagers throw a party where everyone has a good time, but Blanc still refuses to drink and continues to chew his nut. Soon, Kunt's wife and children arrive to say their prayers at the funeral site. Well greets his sister-in-law, and his nephews are very excited to meet him, as they have heard many stories about their dragon-slaying uncle and want to know how he did it. Well's friends decide to put on a play to entertain the children, with Elvin playing the bone dragon, Louise acting as Blanc, and Anna taking the lead role of Well. After the play is over, Well offers his nephews candy and wishes them good luck, as they are poor and will need it. Afterwards, the head of the village comes to talk to him in private and asks him to become the next lord, as most people want that. Well is confused and says he can't do that, as it's Kunt's birthright. But the village chief doesn't care about him or the current lord, and insists that their land has no future under Kunt's rule. In response, Well says that he doesn't want to be a lord in the first place, and that he wants to live as an adventurer. But the chief knows that his foreman, Rodrich, is very clever at dealing with land, which will allow him to own the territory but not have any work to do with it. He offers the boy his full support and says that even the royal palace wants him to take control of the land. And just as the chief finishes speaking, Blanc arrives and praises his keen intelligence for having deduced all this without being told. He confirms that the king does indeed want Well to take control of this area and become its new lord. Blanc then takes Well to discuss the king's plan in private, revealing to Well that since the previous kings, there had been a great desire to develop this region. But the lords here were all common and incompetent, and Kurt is the worst choice to inherit these lands, as he is the most incompetent heir of all time. And what's more, he is a scoundrel, which is why the king was forced to take strict measure. However, he couldn't simply order Well's father to change his heir, so he devised a plan with his trusted officers. They wanted to make Kurt go mad so that he would attack Well, and then Kurt would be tried and imprisoned, and Kurt would take responsibility for his crimes and resign as heir, paving the way for Well to be the new lord. Duke already had this mission to purify the undead that he really wanted to do, and it became the perfect decoy to carry out the real plan. Well asks Blanc why he didn't tell him before, and he replies that it was because things would happen the same way even if he knew everything. Well says that this plan could be dangerous, but Blanc assures him that he was keeping an eye on everyone to make sure there were no problem, revealing that he even went so far as to stop drinking for a few days in order to keep himself in good condition and not fail. Well is still sure about being a lord, but Blanc tells him that he has more power, more influence, and the money needed to develop this region, and that there is no one better suited than him for this role. The next day, Well tells his friends about the palace's plan, and they think it's a good idea, and suggests that Well stop worrying about it and take orders, as he normally does. Soon, Amelie and her children pay Well a visit, and being the cool wizard uncle, he shows the children some cool tricks, creating water balls and a mini rainbow. Well's friends feel sorry for the innocent children, thinking that when their father is removed from his position, they will lose their titles of nobility and even be exiled. In the evening, Well and his friends are having a nice dinner with Aramet, one of Well's brothers, when out of nowhere they hear people shouting outside and discover that a group of disgruntled villagers have gone to the current lord to ask him to appoint Well as his successor. They're not afraid of punishment, because they've had enough of the injustices committed by Curly, and seeing them so serious about the matter, Well asks them all to give him a break, and they're surprised to hear that he's going to stay here for longer, as they'd heard rumors that he was leaving tomorrow. Blanc realizes that the village chief is behind this, so he goes to meet him and warns him to be careful when meddling in someone else's plan, especially the king's plan. He says that the village chief isn't doing anything wrong, but the palace doesn't like people who try to act freely, overriding its plan. The village chief thanks him for the warning, but he is already determined to do what is good for his village. When Blanc returns to the mission, he finds Well wondering about Cuddy's fate after he is removed from office. He can only think that he will be exiled, but Blanc tells him that the palace won't let him live to tell the tale, and now Well is worried because he doesn't want to see his brother die. The next morning, he goes to talk to his brother, and he proposes a deal with Cuddy, asking him to give him some land when he becomes lord, and in return he promises to give him funds to develop his territory. And Well says that this is a win-win solution, and marks the undeveloped land he wants on the map. Cuddy is furious and tears up the map, accusing Well of cunningly trying to take his place as the next lord. Well says he has no such intention, and warns his brother about the growing discontent among the population and the other nobles. Cuddy gets very angry and tells him to leave the room immediately. And outside the room, Well finds this guy's wife and their children, and she wants to talk to him outside. Well tells her that he wanted a happy ending for everyone, but now he doesn't know how to achieve it, and Emily responds by saying that she only cares about her children and wants them to be safe and happy, and that this is why she was approaching Well, because her husband has no future. She asks Well how he feels about her, asking if he likes single mothers, but he responds by saying that he already has enough women, and while talking to this indecent woman, he was a little unsure about what he should do. But out of the blue, Well thought of a unique solution. A while later, when he is making a goo with his friends, Well tells everyone that he has decided to become the lord of these lands. He has considered all the possibilities, and decided not to follow the king's script. Now he is determined not to let anyone die, but to do this, he will need the help of his friends, who have always promised to be by his side. The next day, Well and his friends set up a mini market in the village, where they sell yellow goo, which is actually mayonnaise. They also sell all kinds of fancy clothes and items that can only be found in the capital. People are attracted to their store because it has much better items than the stores here, and Kurt's minions are furious when they see their customers being ripped off. They go to Kurt and ask for help, but he can only throw a tantrum, as he is also defending himself against a powerful mage like Well. When the minions go home after the meeting, Well teleports in front of them, and his friends surround them on all sides. The next day, Kurt discovers that his supporters have been bought off by his brother, who has bribed them with a paid vacation in the capital, and they accept the offer and abandon Kurt. Well visits the capital, tells Roderick about his plan to reduce his brother's political strength by stealing his supporters, and then they go to buy a place to live. Well wants to give his brother's wife a peaceful home. As for Kurt, he plans to send him to church and let him live away from the palace. However, they don't know that Hucker is planning something very evil, sending Kurt a certain gift and asking him to confront his warlock brother. Yes, Hucker's messenger finds Kurt alone in the rain, thinking about murder after Well has bought all his minions. Then he receives a gift from Hucker, which is a legendary item called the Dragon Flute, which can help him kill his warlock brother. Kurt wants to know why Hucker is giving him something so precious, and discovers that he wants the right to undeveloped land, and seeing that their goals are aligned, Kurt accepts the offer and heads into the forest, where Well and his group are already waiting for him. Blanc's feeling is that Kurt is looking for them alone, which means he has something that has given them the confidence to confront them. Well decides to confront his brother, and acts as if it's a coincidence that they're meeting here, but Kurt already knows that his henchmen are hiding in the bushes, and calls them. He insults Well for no reason, and gradually begins to act like a psychopath, saying that no matter how incredible he is, he can't inherit the land because he's the 8th child in the family. Kurt then shows everyone the dragon flute, which he got from Hucker, and threatens to blow it up if one of them moved. Blanc recognizes the dragon flute, which is a legendary item that can summon an army of dragons, and he's sure that not even their group can handle so many dragons at once. Well's friends tell Kurt that he's stupid, and that if the dragons come here, he'll die too. But he laughs at them all and says that the dragons won't hurt the flute user. Well tries to get him to think about the people in the village and his family, who will also die. But he calls them all traitors. He reveals that he doesn't even care about his wife and children, and says that after he kills Well and takes all his money, there will be plenty of gold diggers after him. Well finally realizes how evil his brother is, and wants to attack him, but Kurt threatens to blow the flute. Kurt then laughs at him, saying that seeing a genius wizard terrified was the best thing in the world. He says that everyone's death will fall on him for trying to become the successor, and then brings the flute to his lip. At that moment, Blanc makes a surprise attack on Kurt, but the flute blocks it, and he smiles with the certainty of his victory. Kurt blows the flute, and the sky turns dark as ghosts rise from the ground and surround them. There are no signs of dragons anywhere, and Well still wants to help his brother, but the girl with the pink hair stops him from getting any closer, as she senses something dangerous ahead. He also notices that the ghosts around Kurt are emitting a threatening aura, and this makes Blanc realize that Kurt didn't play the dragon flute, but the threat flute. He was wondering how a Xenogame like him could obtain a legendary item, but in fact he ended up being tricked by the person who sent him the flute. This flute actually attracts ghosts from the surrounding area, and transforms its user into a powerful undead to defeat an enemy with a suicide attack. Hearing this, Well is worried about his brother's death, but Kurt is already possessed by the ghost. His malice combines with theirs, and he is furious with Well for taking everything away from him. His vision turns red as the ghosts gather around him and consume him, turning him into a giant monster. Well is terrified and doesn't want to kill his brother, but Blanc tells him to use his holy magic to defeat him quickly by targeting his core. However, Well is overcome with terror and can't move, so Elise protests by blocking the monster's juice. She really wants to purify this creature, but her energy isn't strong enough to defeat it. Seeing her struggle, Well finally comes back to reality and supports her. He decides that there is no way to save his brother, and that now he should just send him away peacefully. He uses his holy magic and increases its power to purify the giant undead monster, and then a flash of brilliant light disintegrates the monster. After that, Kurt's malicious soul flies to the capital to find the man who deceived him. Hucker was already having a party, thinking that Kurt should have killed Well, and that he will soon have access to all the undeveloped land. His allies praise him for his great intellect, and Hucker says that they still can't fully trust Kurt, because he's just an idiot. At that moment, Kurt's evil spirit breaks the window of the room and takes revenge on Hucker, who deceived him. The next day, Well goes to the capital and finds Roderick outside the crime scene. He learns that there was a massacre last night, and that Kurt's soul kills Hucker and all the guests who attended his party. A total of 12 nobles and their entire families were at the party, and now they're all dead. The priests of the church have already purified Kurt's evil, but the news has spread to everyone, and Roderick tells Well that now that everyone knows about Kurt's crime, they will no longer be able to let the widow who has 2 children stay in the capital, as it will be too dangerous for them. People would want to sacrifice her, and the children too, because they are members of a crime family, and the peaceful life Well wants so much to give them will be impossible here. Well realizes that he needs to put them somewhere else, and feels bad about leaving his sister-in-law in this situation. He later meets up with Armstrong and Blunt and says that one of his older brothers has decided to look after his sister-in-law and her children for the time being. Well says that this situation arose because the nobles selfishly used other people as chess pieces, while the real evil people remained in the shadows. He curses Hucker and also the nobles on the king's side, saying that they are all idiots, but Blunt tells him to look in the mirror and tell himself that, because he himself is a noble. These words hurt Well, and he is consumed by his guilt for many days. But Elise realizes that something is consuming him. She talks to him about it and comforts him, saying that nothing is his fault. Her words cheer him up, and he decides that he will no longer be like the other nobles, and says that he intends to strive to become a good noble who cares about his people. Elise says that he always tries too hard to reach an impossible standard, but that she and his other friends will always support him. Soon, Well goes to meet the king, and the king is quick to praise him for having resolved the disturbances in his territory. He gives him some gigantic chunks of land as a reward. He says that since developing all that land was a big task, he wants to reward Well with something more, and asks if he needs anything else. Well doesn't hesitate and accepts the king's offer. He says that in the accident in which Hucker and his friends died, more than 12 noble families were wiped out, and now their titles are empty. And although only the king has the right to grant these titles, Well wants the right to give 2 titles to some people he knows, in exchange for him developing the land he has received. As soon as they hear this, several people disagree with Well, saying that his request is too rude, and ask him to withdraw it immediately. The prime minister argues that Well only wants to give these lands to someone from his faction, but he defends himself, saying that only someone with great magical power could develop. The Pope also gives his opinion, and they start fighting, and soon Duke Amadeus also joins the debate and openly supports Well, seeing that everyone is making selfish demands. demands, Armstrong shuts them up and tells Well to withdraw his request. He asks the king to give him half the land so that he can develop it using magic. The king refuses his request, saying that he is needed in the capital, that Well can handle the development on his own. He says that the development of the territory takes priority over everything else, and that because of this he will give Well what he asked for. As soon as the king declares this, Armstrong winks at Well, because he was on his side all along, and other people were also acting for his good. The king catches them red-handed, but still grants Well the right to award 2 titles and also promotes him. Well returns home after receiving the reward and tells the single mother that when her children grow up, he will give them both the noble titles he has. She thanks him and informs him that the offer to enter her rear is still on, but he reveals that he is not interested. So Well gets busy developing his territory using magic, and Alvin and Roderick are his field assistants. Well wants to rest after clearing the Jotchas from one area, but Roderick wants him to clear another area and destroy some more rocks to build a church. Well learns that the Pope is going to set up a church on his land, and that this is a very good thing for the development of the land. In addition, the Duke, the General, and the Prime Minister also have plans to set up vacation homes on Well's territory. However, Well won't give up the site to them, as he plans to set up a soy sauce factory here. Later, after the boring stuff, Well is invited to tea, but before he can go with her, Louise and Armstrong arrive to take him to his weekly training. Soon, the little girl with the pink hair, Anna, and Blanc also return from the forest with a giant banana they found, and the little girl with the pink hair wants Well to make banana bread, and Anna also asks him to make something for her, and Roderick doesn't want him to go anywhere, not before he finishes his work. Everyone surrounds him and bombards him with requests, making Well confused about what he should do, so he ignores everything and goes home to have lunch with everyone. At dinner, he is served the same dish he couldn't eat in his previous life. Yes, the moment before he came here, and he finally gets to taste, and Will reflects that his life as the 8th son of a poor nobleman isn't as bad as he thought it would be, thanks to Alfred and his talent as a magician. That's the end of this anime. If you enjoyed following this story, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video so that the platform can recommend my next video. And is there anything else? Well, I don't remember, and since I don't remember, goodbye and see you in the next video. I did.